Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with A Little Princess. Chapter 3, Lottie and Becky. If Sara had been a different kind of girl, life at Miss Minchin's would not have been good for her character at all. She was treated more like an honored guest than a mere student. Miss Minchin disliked Sara, but she was much too smart to say or do anything to make Sara want to leave. She knew that if Sara were to complain to her father, he would take her away at once. So Sara was allowed to do whatever she wanted and was continually praised. But she did not become spoiled, just the opposite. I have been lucky all my life, she told Ermengarde one day. But if you have everything you want and everyone is kind to you, how can you help but be nice? How shall I ever find out if I'm a nice person or a horrid one? I will never know because I have had no trials. Lavinia hasn't had trials, said Ermengarde, and she's horrid enough. It was true that Lavinia put on airs and dominated the younger girls. She was also extremely jealous of Sara, who overshadowed her at every turn. Sara was a good student and a true leader because she was modest and nice to everyone. The younger girls adored her and loved to come up to her room to play with Emily and have tea parties using a doll's tea service. Of all the girls, Lottie looked up to Sara the most. Lottie's mother had died, and her father had sent her away to school, as he simply didn't know how to raise a child alone. Not only was Lottie badly spoiled, but she had learned to play on other people's sympathy because she had lost her mother. One morning, when Sara was passing a sitting room, she heard Miss Minchin and Miss Amelia try to calm down a terribly angry and upset child. Oh, I haven't got a mother!" The hysterical girl cried repeatedly. "No one knows what it's like. No one. If you don't stop this minute, you are going to be severely punished," Miss Minchin threatened, her voice reaching thunder pitch. Lottie screamed louder than ever, and Miss Amelia began to sob. Exasperated, Miss Minchin flounced out of the room, leaving her sister to cope with the situation. "Oh, Miss Minchin," Sara said, running after her. "I heard Lottie crying. I thought perhaps I could quiet her down. May I try?" "Well, you are a clever child," Miss Minchin sneered, drawing in her breath sharply. "Go on in." Lottie was kicking and screaming at the top of her lungs. Poor Amelia was trying to calm her down. "Miss Minchin gave me permission to try to help Lottie," Sara explained. "Perhaps if you stepped out." "Oh, Sara," whimpered Miss Amelia, "you can certainly try." She slipped out of the room, laughing to have an excuse to leave. Sara did not beg or plead with Lottie, nor did she threaten her. She just sat beside her and waited. Finally, Lottie opened her swollen eyes. She saw it was only another student. However, it was the one who owned Emily and other nice things. "I haven't got any mother," Lottie stated. "Neither have I," Sara said simply. "Where is she?" Lottie asked, astounded. She had never met another girl who didn't have a mother. "She went to heaven," Sara explained, but I'm sure she comes down sometimes to see me, though I don't see her. So does your mother. They can both see us now. Perhaps they are in this room this very minute." Lottie bolted upright and looked around her. She was a pretty little curly-headed creature, despite her tantrums. If her mother had been there in the last half hour, she might not have thought Lottie was a girl who was related to an angel. "Real people live in heaven, you know," Sara said, talking as if in a kind of dream. "There are fields of lilies there. People can float around wherever they like. There are walls of pearls and gold. The angels look down and send us beautiful messages." "I want to go there," Lottie cried, snuggling close to Sara and drinking in every word she said. "I haven't got a mother. I want a mother I can see and be with." "I will be your mother, Lottie," Sara said. "We will pretend that you are my little girl and Emily shall be your sister. Let's go and tell her." Lottie agreed quite cheerfully. She went with Sara, completely forgetting all the fuss she had made. From that time on, Sara was Lottie's adopted mother. One of the things that Lottie and Ermengarde especially liked about Sara was her wonderful storytelling ability. It was a great power she had, and the one that had gained her more friends than anyone else. Everywhere she went, groups gathered around her in hopes of listening to one of her spellbinding tales. When Sara talked, she got completely lost in a world of kings and queens, beautiful ladies in waiting, and knights of old whose adventures she was narrating. When I'm telling a story, she often said, it doesn't seem as if it were made up. It seems more real than anything in the world. Sometime later, Sara met another girl who was destined to play another important role in her life. One foggy winter afternoon, when she was out of her carriage, wrapped in her warmest velvets and furs, Sara noticed a pathetic little creature standing on the steps of the school. Later that evening, Sara was telling one of the stories in a sitting room. The same girl slipped in a door, carrying a coal box too heavy for her. She knelt down on the hearth to start the fire and sweep in the ashes. Sara noticed that although this poor sad girl kept at work and didn't look up, she was very interested in the story. For that reason, Sara raised her voice, and the mermaid swam slowly about in the crystal green water and dragged a fishnet woven of deep-sea pearls along with them. Sara could see that she had drawn the little girl in the made-up world under the sea. It was obvious that the little girl was fascinated. Yet when Sara finished her story, the little maid, for that's what she was, hurried quickly out of the room. "Who is that little girl who makes the fire?" Sara asked Mariette. Her name was Becky, and she was new at Miss Minchin's. Sara learned. She was 14, but was so small and thin that she looked more like 12. She did every kind of task around the school, scrubbing floors and washing windows, polishing boots. She even carried the heavy coal scuttles up and down the stairs. Although she looked for her, Sara did not see Becky for several weeks. Then one afternoon after dancing class, Sara found Becky sound asleep in a soft chair before the crackling fire. Becky always made Sara's inviting rooms the last stop on her work rounds, as if she loved to look at Emily and all the curious things from India. However, this day Becky was exhausted, but she sat down to rest and just dozed off. "Oh, Miss," Becky stammered, jumping up. "Don't be afraid," Sara said calmly, moving close to her. "You were tired and couldn't help it." "I don't think you're really awake yet." Becky stared at her in amazement. She was so used to getting bad treatment, she usually got it. It was hard to get used to anyone being nice to her. "Are you angry, miss?" she gasped. "Are you going to tell Miss Minchin?" "No," Sara assured her. "Of course I'm not. We are the same, you and I. I am just a young girl like you. It was just an accident. I am not you and you are not me. Why don't you stay and have a piece of cake?" The next 10 minutes were like heaven to Becky. Sara gave her a nice thick slice of orange lemon tea cake on a lovely china plate with a silver fork and a linen napkin. "Once I saw a princess," said Becky. "I was standing on the street outside Covent Garden watching people go to the opera. There was one everyone stared at the most. Everyone said, 'That's a princess.' She was a beautiful grown-up girl all dressed in pink. You look just like her." "Thank you for the compliment," Sara replied. "By the way, were you listening to that story I was telling some of the girls the other night?" "Yes," Becky confessed. "You know I shouldn't have, but it was beautiful. I couldn't help it. Why don't you come back sometime when your chores are done, and I will tell you the rest." When Becky went downstairs, she was not the same girl who had staggered up, loaded by the coal scuttle. She had an extra piece of cake in her pocket, but she had seen warmed by more than fire and cake. Something else had warmed her. That something was Sara. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.